and then they show how badass Godzilla is in the final act when he wins.
Right.
Yeah, that was my thought. But that was just cool. I thought that would be good in having more than one battle if they're only going to use one other monster.
Uh-huh.
But you brought up the Incredible Hulk, which is a good example because they have the Hulk be the central focus of the movie throughout the entire movie, and they don't exactly just have Emil Blonsky show up out of nowhere and then bam, he's the Abomination. They build him up through the whole movie as this psychotic soldier who wants nothing more than to be as strong or stronger than the Hulk. And
Yeah.
I think that was one of the strong points of that movie. And I know that movie gets a lot of slack from people who are who are maybe a little more advocated of the comic version of the Hulk than the TV version.
Right.
But I think that movie really kind of took both things, and they had the Hulk as the center point like in the TV show, and then they had Emil Blonsky be, I think, 100% faithful to the comics in my opinion.
Right. Speaking of the whole building up to the villain thing, I think they can do the same thing with Godzilla.
Absolutely.
Like, this is kind of an idea I had. Godzilla comes out of the sea and destroys a major city, and we all know that Godzilla is full of nuclear radiation. What if some of that nuclear radiation from Godzilla infected some areas of a city, and that would eventually leak to the ocean or to some sort of a zoo, and that would create a monster that Godzilla would fight. And over the film, over time, the radiation would mutate this animal into a giant monster, and it would appear in the third act. I mean, that's how I could have imagined this. Like, just build up the villain up until the final act.
Yeah. And that would support what I've been saying since they announced that there was going to be more than one monsters when Brian Rogers said that last year. Is that I think that the best way to do another monster would be to very closely connect him to Godzilla, like they did with the Hulk and Abomination, and just not make the other monster show up out of nowhere, and just have him come in and fight Godzilla, and then that's it. I like your idea. That's a really cool idea.
Yeah. Just like in Godzilla 2000, Orga was connected with Godzilla. The reason he came to Earth was because of Godzilla, because he wanted power. So that was a very good subplot that they added to Godzilla 2000. And
yeah, I loved that plot point.
Yeah, that was terrific.
My favorite scene in that movie doesn't really have Godzilla. Well, he's in it. He's in the scene, but he's not in the shot I want to bring up. Remember that scene where they're on the roof and they're looking at Godzilla fighting the spaceship? And they're talking about Regenerator G1, and they just had EO has that pin box, and they slide in I forgot what it was, and it's Godzilla. And I was like, when I was a kid, I was like, oh, they're gonna try and clone Godzilla, and I thought that was cool. I've always wanted to see that happen.
Yeah, I didn't get that at first. I was like, well, why is there a picture of Godzilla on that sandbox? And then over time, I realized it's because of the aliens. They want Godzilla.
Yeah.
And speaking of the monsters that we're sure to see on the Legendary Pictures film, what kind of monsters do you want to see? Do you want to see new monsters, or do you want to see the whole classic monsters being updated?
Originally when I first talked about this, I was kind of in the field of saying I want to see all Toho monsters. But what I think would be cool is if they start out with original monsters and then build up to a classic Toho monsters, kind of like what was done with Final Wars when they have Monster X show up, and when he can't beat Godzilla in his normal form, he has to mutate into Ghidorah, and that's my favorite scene in that movie is when Monster X turns into Ghidorah and they fight in that like hellish silly.
I honestly wasn't expecting that in Final Wars. I heard, back in 2005 when I bought the movie for Christmas, I heard that King Ghidorah was in it, but then the thing with Monster X came up. I was like, "Where's King Ghidorah?" And I guess it was just a rumor. Then Monster X transformed into King Ghidorah, or Kaiser Ghidorah in this case, and it just really caught me by surprise. Yeah,
Were you confused about that at all? Because I was a young kid when Final Wars came out, and I was in like 5th grade, and I used to have my mom print me out stuff because obviously I didn't have really any other way of finding out about new Godzilla movies. And what my mom would do at work is, if she wasn't doing anything, she'd print me out all these little synopses of all the movies coming out that year. And it was Final Wars that year. And what I really grabbed onto was I heard Kaiser Ghidorah, and I was like, oh my god, they're gonna do this more badass version of King Ghidorah. And I thought it was kind of anticlimactic when I actually saw the movie that Christmas, and I was like, oh, that's not Kaiser Ghidorah. That's just what the mutants are called when they're at their peak state. But no, it turned out that they had a more powerful version of Ghidorah.
Yeah.
That's what really got my attention.
Oh yeah. Well, me, I'm all for new monsters for the film because we've seen updates of the Toho monsters so many times from the Heisei series, the Millennium series. It's just with each new reboot the Toho does, it's just almost like remake after remake. Like Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, it was kind of a loose remake of Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, or Godzilla vs. Monster Zero.
Yeah.
Godzilla vs. Mothra, that was an obvious loose remake of Mothra vs. Godzilla.
I didn't like that movie.
I don't need to tell you about Mechagodzilla 2. In Japan, it's just called Mechagodzilla. But here in America, it's just called Mechagodzilla 2. I want to see new monsters in this film. If they're going to add Toho monsters, then I would want to see King Ghidorah and Gigan.
Oh, Gigan would be cool.
Yeah.
Especially if they did a version of him that was a little more focused on the cyborg aspect, I think would be cool. Because they kind of brought that more to the forefront in Final Wars when they made him blue and they had all the wires sticking out. But I almost think that maybe Ghidorah should be the primary villain, and then later on they should build up to some other more powerful monster being constructed. And while I think that Ghidorah is Godzilla's strongest enemy, maybe they could change it up a little bit and make it a little fresh, and have Gigan be kind of the finalized, perfect version of maybe what Ghidorah was supposed to be, or something like that. And he wouldn't really have to look that silly. I mean, Final Wars, in my opinion, didn't look that goofy. He just looked like a really badass robot.
Yeah, definitely. But I showed some of my friends, and they're not Godzilla fans. I showed them the design of the Final Wars Gigan, and even they admitted that design was completely badass. It was like, wow, that is one good-looking badass robot or alien. But yeah, with a design like that, it just shows that you can redesign a classic design like the 1972 Gigan and remodelize them into this badass cyborg in Final Wars.
And I like both designs, but I do prefer the Final Wars one. But I think that the original Showa film was kind of focusing more of Gigan as a monster. They brought up that he was a cyborg, but it wasn't like, oh my god, he's a cyborg and Ghidorah's organic and they're completely different. It was just kind of like Gigan was another space monster,
Yeah. It was at that time that Toho, they were into the whole alien craze and just going crazy with it. Just, put a monster out of nowhere and, just don't worry about the subplot. Everyone's just coming here to see the monsters.
Yeah. Definitely that whole early 70s Godzilla feel was just of a monster mash. And, I felt that they kind of, they started to lean in a different direction with the Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and they still had the aliens in it, but, I mean, they didn't really talk about space that much. It was more of, invading
Earth.
Yeah. And while the other ones were just kind of not really invading Earth as much as, just sending the monsters in, I mean, I didn't really get the sense from Godzilla vs. Gigan that they were trying to really invade Earth. I mean, you got the sense that those were like very few of those cockroaches things left. And maybe they were just trying to not even conquer the Earth, but just kind of become prominent members of it and just kind of fit in. One thing I want to go back to that you said was your original idea for the monster Godzilla could fight of the multiple animals thing. You've heard of the monster Bagon, right?
Oh yeah.
That drop.
Bagon? I thought it was Bagon.
Oh, I've heard it pronounced both ways. I prefer Bagon because Bagon kind of sounds a little, I don't know, it sounds a little silly to me, but I've heard it pronounced both ways. But I think that if since that monster's never been seen on the big screen, since I think they used him in a video game,
Yeah, Super Godzilla.